How's it going, guys? What we have here is what I like to call the Pinstriper interview series. A while back, a lot of guys were asking me to make DVDs on how to pinstripe, and I thought it might be better to actually interview guys that I know that make a living at it and have been for a lot of years. Me, I'm just a guy that goofs around in this garage. I paint my silly little rat-finks and monsters, and I pinstripe some stuff, and I earn some extra cash from my projects that way. But these guys actually feed themselves, they pay their rent, they go to the movies and out to dinner with their old ladies with this money. So I thought it might be better to ask them. You guys had asked me all different questions and stuff that I should ask them. I came up with 20 different questions. I asked them those questions, and I have 4 guys that I've interviewed. You'll meet them all here on YouTube. So let's get right into it. Here you are. These are the Pinstriper interview series. Enjoy it. Alright everybody, this is going to be the Pinstriping DVD everybody had been asking for. That's my buddy Gary, the local brush back there, messing in his paint kit. I have 20 questions here that everybody had asked on Facebook and online. The 20 questions from the home office of Belton, Missouri. So we're going to go through this, and instead of having a how-to DVD on how to pinstripe, I think there's too many like DVDs, VHS tapes, and YouTube videos like that already. This is going to be more of these questions being asked to these guys that have been doing pinstriping, lettering, airbrushing, gold leafing, everything like that. This part of the automotive art aspect, they've been doing it for years. They actually make a living at it. I just goof off when I go to car shows and paint my monsters and pinstripe like mailboxes and stuff to get auctioned off for charities and everything. But these guys actually do this for a living. So they're going to give you probably, we're going to go through, let's say, 4 different guys with pinstriping stuff. We're going to ask them all the same questions, and you're going to get a different answer for each one. You walk away with that information and make the best of it that you can, but you're probably going to have a better insight seeing how 4 different artists do what they do than listening to me just saying, oh, this is how I do something. You got to come up with your own style and everything, and it's different for everybody. Even one of the guys is going to be a left-handed pinstriper, you know what I'm saying? So it keeps things realistic out there. So what we're going to do here is, we're going to get started, we're going to get going. It's just going to kind of wing this. And I know Gary over here, I'm 53. I've known Gary since I'm like 15. You slick guys with calculators can do the math on that at home. And that's it. So we're going to get started. I'll ask Gary questions as we're doing stuff. And at the end, I'll probably just reread this and see what he has to say. And that's that. So we'll be right back after we get set up. This is Gary, the local brush. Hey, everybody at home. Now, I've known Gary, like I said, for a very long time. This is the guy I worked at Newbridge Auto Body when I was in a long time ago in the 1900s. And I watched Gary come in, wipe the car down, he's pulling lines and stuff. And the one thing I'll always remember, I may get misty, this guy here, they had this big ass gray door in the shop, and I was trying to pinstripe and do things on there. I'm like using a model car brush and tester's paint, and Gary went up, he did this little tiny design and wrote, I was here. So that's something I always remember. I am getting misty, I love this guy. So, this is Gary's paint box. My paint box is probably in worse shape. You guys have seen it on other DVDs. There we go. That's a paint box. What do you got in your paint box, Gary?
We've got all different kind of brushes here. I use different kinds of stripers. I use straight lines from Paul Quinn. They're called Domini Quins. This is a brand new brush, never used. It holds its shape, perfectly straight lines. That's what I use it for. I also use another Paul Quinn brush that's also good for straight lines because it holds its shape. I also like using Von Dago brushes. Von Dago brushes are designed for, in my opinion, more scroll work. So we'll show you one of those. They're a black handle brush, nice lacquered black handle brush. This is a brand new one. We'll break in some new brushes today. Just for shape of it, I'll do something that's not too classy. Gives you a nice shape though. Wet it up a little bit.
Put it right up there. That's a dagger brush, guys.
This is used for doing scroll work, design work. I do a lot of fancy stuff with it. It's a Von Dago. New brush, works great.
How much is a brush like that?
This brush is probably, I guess, off top about $17. A brush like this one here, the Domini Quinn, is about maybe 27. So brushes have different uses, and we'll try a couple of them today and see how they work.
So you put some paint now. Let me go back over to paint. You said, what kind of paint are you using? Because most everybody out there uses like One Shot or something from House of Color. Gary doesn't use that. He uses basically automotive paint, like the base coat paint that you would clear over, right?
Sometimes I use base coat so that I don't have to worry about the paint lifting. It covers pretty well, most base coats do. But in any case, right now we're using Exalta. It's Hot Hues, that's the brand. And
you got a can over here I could show everybody.
Yep.
So here's a can of the Hot Pinstripe Effects paint. That's Hot Hues. If you guys want to look for that at your local art or automotive supply, I guess, or online somewhere. I'm sure they could mail it to you if you live out in the Tules. So
just look up Cap Industries, C-A-P-P or C-A-A-P, I'm not really sure. And they'll send it out to you. They've got a whole color list. You can find them online. Okay, we're going to add a little hardener to it.
What kind of hardener is that?
That's the hardener that's designed for the paint.
Oh, so they supply the same company has their hardener.
That's true, their hardener. This paint can dry in 5 minutes, or if you add a lot of hardener, it'll take a little bit longer. It'll set up and give you a bigger window before it sets up on the brush. So right now we're just putting a little bit in so we can play with it and give me time to show you a few different tricks, I guess. This is just a reducer. I'm thinning it out just a little bit.
How do you know if you've got it after so many years of doing it, you're just used to it, or what's like the right viscosity or consistency to?
Well, weather makes a difference. If it's cold out, you want to add maybe a little bit more hardener and a little less reducer to keep it a little thicker. The idea in pinstriping is you want a little bit of drag on the brush. Drag is when you put the brush down and it doesn't fall to either side and be sloppy. It'll actually hold its shape. So when you go to pull it, the brush doesn't want to slide. It wants to stay right where you put it. So it's hair-shaped thicker. And that's a thing that you have to get used to when you're mixing the paint. If you mix it and it's too thin, it's just not going to be easy to work with. If it's a little thicker, it's easier. And that just takes a little bit of practice in mixing the paint. And that's with almost any pinstriping paint. Whether it's one-shot lettering enamel, most of the time you can take one shot right out of the can.
So if you mix and you're not thin enough, when you take your brush and you pull it, you're going to feel it like the brakes are on, like you're trying to drive with your emergency brake on. It skip, 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 skip.
Right.
So you should add a little bit more, and you're going to have to just keep practicing.
A few drops at a time. With one shot, you can either add turpentine, or you can add their brand of reducers or thinners, and they've got a fast, a medium, and a slow. And it depends on the weather. If it's cold outside, you want to use a faster drying, or what they call low temp thinner. And if it's summertime, you want to add the slower to slow it down so it doesn't dry too fast.
So when I use one shot, I use mineral spirits. Is that bad?
Mineral spirits is fine. It's like a medium to a slow drying reducer.
So who are you telling me use gasoline to thin out there one shot?
That was Frank Bird back in 1960.
Was that a bad thing? Or is that, I ran out of this and you know, I can take it out of my motorcycle gas tank kind of a situation?
Well, it's not good to breathe, first of all. It's gasoline. Second of all, it did discolor the light colors in time. If you striped in white and added gasoline, it might have a yellow cast to it in time. It didn't really hurt the paint, just wasn't the right thing to add. But Frank used to do it all the time.
So basically all those stories you hear about crazy pinstripers is true.
In any case, we're mixing the paint and we're going to give it a try and see how it works out.
So what was that little dab you just put on there for that paint box you made?
You're noticing all the little things that I do.
See, these are the tricks of the trade you guys want to see. And there's a reason why you did that, so I gotta ask, you know?
The reason I put that dab down is so the cup doesn't slide or fall off, it sticks right to that spot.
Well, then there you go.
Okay? This is a little thinner cup. It's got a clip on it. It's made for artists. Clips on the edge of a art board.
There you go, guys. See that? It's got that little... So I guess that can slip right over the edge of like a, I don't know, a clipboard or whatever you're using. And you put your stuff on the inside there. I use a, because I'm cheap. In the Grand Rapids car show once, I didn't have my little cup. So I cut the bottom of a Coke bottle. And you know, so many years later, I still got that, so it works.
Okay, I guess we're ready to walk over.
We're gonna go pinstripe. Now, we're using a piece of, what is that, tile?
It's marble.
It's marble. A piece of marble, I guess, from renovating a bathroom or something. And what are you wiping it down with? You cleaning it off?
I'm using wax and grease remover.
It doesn't have pea stains on it, trust me. It's just every time you do something, if there's a little bit of dust on what you're going to stripe, I can tell you from experience, because if you've ever gotten like a Ed Roth monster from me through the mail, there's like little dots, that's the dust, because I didn't wipe it off. I was just ready to do what I was going to do, and so there you go. You'd be dragging dirt through all your lines.
We're going to break in a new brush right now. So I'm going to wet it up a little bit. And this is a Vondago. And do just a little scroll work, a little design.
When you get a new brush, I mean, do you have to wash it? Do you wash it with like Head and Shoulders or the lack of thin? How do you get a new brush ready to start its life and make you some lunch money?
Some new brushes have a product in it that keeps the brush stiff, so that when you get a brush, it's not all bent out of shape. So it's got like, I'm going to guess something like a hairspray or something like that in there, because they are natural hair brushes that keep them stiff. When you get the brush, if it's a good brush, like a Vondago, you don't have to trim it. And if there is a trimming process, it's really, really fine. I mean, if you have one hair that's just sticking out a little bit too long, just take a section of that hair out.
Could you pull that hair out with a pair of tweezers, that one hair, or was that one hair going to mess up the whole batch?
The one hair is just going to, every time you put the brush down, it's going to be sticking out just a little bit too long. And some brushes just need that slight trim. We're not talking about hacking off a tip. We're not even talking about taking off a 1/16 of an inch. We're talking about less. Just about a smidgen of hair, the smallest amount you could think of. Just get that little bit of hair out of the way. And then you should be ready to go. Let's see what this one's like. I cleaned this one off with wax and grease remover. I'm putting in a regular thinner right now, and just to get anything out of the brush, and then we should be ready to go. So I'll just.
So you're not gonna like make a design. You're just gonna wing this, and that's it.
I'm going to wing just a free-form design, nothing special.
If you were doing like, would this be different from doing like 2 door handles on a guy's car, or is this something you would do like over the trunk lock or a hood ornament or something?
If it's a centerpiece on a car, the centerpiece of the hood, I would probably do a symmetrical design, both sides identical. If it's the trunk of a car, the same thing. If you're working on one side of a car, like a door handle, you can just do a free-form design, and you want it to kind of flow back to give the car a feeling of movement, that the car is flowing forward. So the design should actually taper off going back.
Okay.
Here I just figured I would just, since it's marble, I can probably wipe it off. I've never actually striped on marble, but we have it lined here. So I'm just going to do just a couple of little freehand design, nothing special. And then I figured I would put down a line that's thick and show how to pick up on that line. Of course, I know some people have a hard time picking up on a line when they finish a line. So
when you say pick up a line, you're talking, not just doing a little scroll thing. That's like, you got a 60 Cadillac and you're pulling that straight line down the side, and you think you're running out of paint. You're halfway through a door. It's like this big, and you're gonna stop, repalette your brush, pick up some more paint, and you're gonna start that line again and make it look like nobody's been there where it started and stopped, right?
Correct.
All right. So I'm going to move the camera in. Gary's going to get his stuff ready, and we're going to get the full frame so you guys can see at home, so you're not looking from 4 feet away. So let me move the camera over. All right. So there we are. That's the Right there, you can see that's this big piece of marble. I'm going to say it's a 12 by 12. And that's like an old catalog or Speedway Motors catalog or Duluth Trading Company kind of thing or Trader Joe's, I don't know.
It's Uline.
But it's an old catalog. You get enough of those guys. So instead of just throwing them out or using them to start fires in the fireplace, that's what you use it for. We're going to palette the brush. I'll zoom in on that. So what is paleting the brush, Gary? What's, you hear that, and like, what's it really all about?
It's all about loading the paint onto the brush.
That's kind of like taking a paintbrush and dipping it into your house paint and like pulling it on the side of the 1 gallon can?
Yeah, but you want to fill the complete brush up. When you're working with house paint, you may not want to fill the whole brush up. Here you want the brush to be totally full of paint for a longer line. Plus, when the hairs are dry at the back, the paint doesn't flow as well and the brush wants to dip over.
What is dip over?
It'll fall from the weight of the paint.
Now let me zoom in on that palette there, and I'll flip my screen so you can see what you're doing.
I'm going to go side to side, and as I'm doing it, the paint is beginning to just dry a hair shade, and I can feel a drag on the brush.
So,
it's making it harder to pull.
Okay, so it doesn't feel as slippery.
Right.
And this is loading the brush?
Loading the brush.
Okay.
Dipping it in. Now, I know some people that they work straight out of the cup, and they wipe the brush on the edge of the cup, and then they go to work. And that's their comfort zone. For me...
So that there's no right way or wrong way, it's whatever works for you, whatever feels good?
In any field.
Okay.
Yep, definitely. So we're going back and forth, and when I get this brush feeling the way I want it to feel, I usually just tap it down so I know that it's kind of centered instead of being bent to one side. And then I'll start putting the line down. Now, I'm going to put on another pair of glasses so I can see what I'm doing.
That's okay, I got to do that too. All right, let me zoom this out, and this is the panel, and Gary's just going to wing it.
This one might need a little hair. Let's get this real close because I'm looking at this brush, and there's a hair right in the very, very front tip.
Can you see that, guys? Yeah, let me that.
Okay.
Because it's tough to get this camera to automatically step off to the side, and we'll see if we can't get everyone to see that. You know what? How about if I did this? Because my camera's not going to focus on this, guys, because it's so tiny, but I'll put this white behind it, and maybe we can get the camera to focus. Can you see that little tiny hair? The very front there, I'm going to point to the brush, and I'll put the white behind it. That little bit of kind of like, looks like an eyebrow thing going on there. You know, when you're as old as me, those ear hairs, that's what that is. See? Now I'll make sure I got a long time on that so you can really get a good view. So that's what Gary's going to get rid of now.
We're going to only cut half of that off.
So I'm going to zoom in on that because this is really important because one of you guys had asked, how do you trim a brush?
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. You go right ahead. I'm very on top of that. It's excellent focusing. Look at that, gang. You're not cutting it right next to the tip, just that little bit of...
Just take a little bit of it off. That's all I did.
All right, you guys can see, I'm going to point to it because the camera's really focused on it. You can see, I'm going to point with the razor blade. See that little line right there? That's that little hair that was off, and he didn't go on top of it, but just like right over there to get it off. Because once this thing's loaded with paint, that's going to hold the paint, and you'll never notice that little hair was there.
Putting the brush down.
Do you hold your breath at all when you do something like this?
No.
Because I know sometimes I'll hold my breath. I guess maybe it's just a self-confidence thing. And how are you, like, you just making a squiggly line, or you have something in your head already, or a premeditated idea?
I really don't have anything in my head at this point. I'm not trying to do a design. I'm kind of just trying to show how the brush can work. I'm slowly rolling it a little bit. Now I'm a two-handed striper, so I have a tendency to hold.
So you're right-handed, but you use your left hand to steady your right hand.
That's true. And when I put it down, you just want to put the brush down where you want it, and just pull it a little bit, and bring it down.
I know it looks so easy, but when did you start pinstriping, Gary?
50 years ago.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
So as
When-
old
when
as
they
I
were-
am,
When they were making black and white movies.
so 66?
I started striping in 1965, I think.
Okay. And what was it like then to stripe as in comparison to today?
It's a lot easier to stripe today because the brushes are better.
Well, it has created its own industry.
The brushes are better. There are more brushes to choose from. There's straight line brushes, there's scroll brushes, there's design brushes.
So the pinstriping at the time in the 60s was pretty much like a sideline or a derivative of sign painting, or the guys that would put the lines on safes and stuff.
Correct.
So there you go. So it kind of became its own industry.
Right now the paint is getting nice and thick for me the way I like it, so it's starting to dry up. What I mean by dry is not dry solid, just giving me more drag as I go along. Right now I have nothing in mind, so I'm just going with the flow. We got a little dry in there. So since it dried out, or what we call
Right, yeah,
the dry
see-
brush effect,
You see how that got jagged, guys? That's because the paint is drying as Gary's using it. And that's why you gotta really kind of keep it wet.
so it's an easy fix. Somebody said
Wait a minute,
in
let
the
me
question,
You're standing in the way of my camera, Gary. Let me, all right, so, oh, well, now I'll zoom in on it. You can see how Gary just kind of thickened up the line. Now, I know I've done this because it's a lot easier than wiping it off and starting again.
again, I'm just winging this, so I'm just kind of like putting the brush down wherever I feel like it, and then I'm trying to create a design at the same time. And that's kind of the way I work.
So how did you make like that big, right here, this big curve? How did you, what do you do with the brush to get it to make that circle?
I just kind of like spin the brush. Literally with my thumb, I push forward, and as I push forward, the brush will follow around.
So you kind of have it and you're twirling it between your thumb and forefinger like that.
Right, exactly. Now, I don't like to leave a single line flowing by itself. So I'll always end up with an attachment someplace. So by leaving a brush like this, I can't, and I can't leave it like this either. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to create something that these two end up tying together so they're not a single line by themselves.
Now I'm going to zoom right in on that brush going right down and try and follow it out. And you're not holding your breath at all.
No, I can talk at the same time.
Well, like you said, you've been doing it for 50 years, so I guess after so much time, did you ever hold your breath or do something to keep a hand steady or anything like that?
The only time that I'll hold my breath is if I'm doing a long straight line, and maybe the last 6 to 10 inches, if I'm pushing myself, then I'll hold my breath just to get that last 6 inches in. Other than that, I breathe.
Well, I ask because a lot of people ask, and I know when I've striped at some shows and stuff, they ask me if I hold my breath, and so I figure I just keep asking people because I know I do every once in a while. I don't know, maybe it's a subconscious thing or just like a mental strength, kind of maybe a Zen pinstriper thing. I have no clue. So if you're doing something like this and you make a mistake, or you think you goofed up, because I know, like, I think you told me one time a long time ago as a joke, and I took it seriously, if you make a mistake on one side, make the same mistake on the other side. But what would you do to correct it? Kind of like when we had with the brush got dry right there and it feathered, so you thickened the line up?
You thicken the line up. If you don't want to thicken the line up, then you can wipe it off.
It would be easier just to thicken the line up though, because it doesn't look bad, it doesn't look wrong.
No, as long as you don't make the line too thick. But you can, for example, that spot was dry brushed, and there's a little dry brush up here. So I'm going to correct it, I'm going to bring this one down into the other one, and we'll show.
You see, it does, you know, everything looks good.
Now I'm still going to go into another style of striping and just fill it in.
You see guys, I think that looks fantastic, and I've stolen this gratuitously from Gary on some stuff I've done. Because especially when you're just knocking stuff out for like a charity auction, I mean, if somebody likes it, they like it, they'll bid on it, but if not, then they won't, but it's all good in the long run. Now, I think a lot of guys ask the question, you know, how do you come up with a layout, or how do you come out with a design? Because for lack of a better way, everyone's been prepped or brainwashed or what you will. Everything's Von Dutch this, Von Dutch that. And, you know, since before him, there's been a lot of guys that have done this work on, because pinstriping has been around since 18 something or other, when they would pinstripe, you know, a vault or a safe or a cash register, coffee grinders, horse and buggy coaches.
Or even a Roman chariot.
There you go, Roman chariots. And Gary has actually pinstriped Steinway pianos. And what's that, Queens or Brooklyn? That's Queens, right?
It's in Queens.
It's in Queens.
Here's a little mistake we're going to wipe off.
Wait, let me show everybody. What's that very tip right there I see?
Yeah, it got a little globby on me. So we're just going to literally wipe it off. Now,
Wait, okay.
Can we see it?
I couldn't see it, but I'm going to try and move my camera. I think I can get you from this side.
Okay, the advantage to working with urethane is that if you wipe it off with a wax and grease remover, which is not a good thinner for the paint, it'll wipe it off without leaving a smear.
Yeah, it looks like that's set up a little on you, but it'll come off.
Whereas if I did it with one shot, it would probably smear.
So you're using just the very tip of your finger on that rag.
Yep, fingernail and a little wax and grease remover so it doesn't smear.
I guess that takes some practice too.
Well, you have to have a fingernail.
Well, don't chew your fingernails, guys. That's what Gary says.
Let's put a line down and show about picking up from where you left off. But I'm going to exaggerate picking up and putting a line down. If I'm drawing a straight line, this is an exaggeration for thickness, so you'll understand. I'm bringing the line down.
So how do you make the line so thick when you were just making all those nice thin lines?
It's all a matter of pressure.
So
strictly pressure.
So if you keep your hand up and off, it'll be a thin line. If you push down really hard, it really makes the brush kind of push out to the sides, and you get a thick line like that.
Correct. The hairs want to spread out as soon as you put pressure
So
on.
Everyone's style can be different just by how heavy-handed or light-handed they are.
That's right. That's
okay.
Exactly correct.
So basically, like a 0 or a 00 brush for you will make different width lines as it will for me or somebody else who stripes, because just how we handle the brush. I may use a 00 brush and it'll come out like your 0 brush.
It depends on how heavy of a hand you have. Most people that are striping at the beginning like to use a 00, 000. Companies call them quadruple zeros. I'm talking about the finest brush to give them the finest line. It's not necessary to use the finest line, the finest brush. It all depends on how heavy of a hand you have.
See, that was my argument why the how-to pinstripe videos and stuff that are out there are specific to the individual, and everyone's different. There's no, like we said before, there are no rules, there's no right way, there's no wrong way. Your hand may be heavier than this guy, you're right-handed, you're left-handed, you use your feet to pinstripe, it could be totally different.
I think the biggest important thing in pinstriping is practicing. It's a constant thing. It's like any other type of business or sport or whatever. If you don't practice, you'll never get it. Somebody playing a trumpet, an instrument, has to practice. A piano has to practice. Otherwise, they're never going to get it. If you're a pinstriper, it's got to be a constant practicing all the time. If you stop for a long period of time and go back to it, it's not going to be as easy.
So if you want to be the Cole Porter of pinstriping, you have to be on it 24/7. If you want to be like Louis Prima, you do it once in a while.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me get back in and zoom in on your thick line, and you were going to show us how to make a straight line and then repalette your brush and go back into it and pick it up. And one of the guys had asked is when you make this line, you'll do it and then you'll stop, and you want to continue the line further down. And when you go, you tend to be heavy-handed when you first touch, I notice, and it makes it go boop wide and it kind of tightens in. And Gary's going to show us how not to do that.
Well, first of all, I'm going to show you that putting a thin line down next to it is the way you're going to start with that thick line. So if I go like this, that's actually how I'm going to start with the thicker brush. I'm putting it down, now I'm backing off. This is where I ended, but now I'm going to go over it to here. I'm going to put that brush down thin, and I'm going to look at it, and as I'm pulling it, I'm putting more and more pressure on, watching it get thicker, watching the brush get thicker. When I get to the end, I'm at the same thickness, basically, or should be, as the line was. So you don't see much of a difference between them. I started off, so you can see it again without the line, I started off thin, and then I started putting more pressure on it, more pressure, until I got to the thickness of the original line that I could keep going.
So you see that, gang? Up here, when you start, you don't put, this is what we're talking about, being heavy-handed. When you push down, it gets wider. When you lift up, it gets thinner. So you did a very light touch at the beginning, and he kind of starts, and as he's pulling, he pushes down like that, and it gets wider to meet the original line. So that's how you avoid that droop or sag or what have you.
Oh, got a little dry brush there.
All right, now I'm going to zoom in.
Pulling that same line.
And again, guys, it's really a matter of practice. And I've always said, for me, it's a lot easier to do something, what I call the squiggly lines. It's a lot easier for me to do like a Von Dutchy style pinstripe or something like that. This is where the real bank is, the real money. You're going to go to use Carlot, a new Carlot. They want those two straight lines down the side. And that's where you're really going to make your good money, because not everybody wants an individualistic piece. I couldn't get that out. Individualistic. So Gary's now just goofing off, making these lines match the other artwork.
There's a double line that you're talking about.
Just for argument's sake, do like a thick and thin double line, and like what kind of an end would you put on it? Like if you're going from the header panel to a taillight, just a little shorter version with ends on it.
Okay, let's do something, well, this will be something that...
if you don't have a body line on the car to follow, like an 84 Cutlass or something?
No, I'm just going to put down a piece of tape just so you can see how I square something off. And all I do is, usually I'll use Scotch tape because it gives you a nicer line, but I don't have it in front of me or in front of the camera, so I'm just going to press down this real hard to get out the wrinkles that are in the tape. I'm going to run a line down from here. And we get thicker as we go down.
You're going to go right over that tape?
I'm going to hit the tape.
Oh, so this way when you pull that tape off, it gives you that nice squared line. I see that on cars that are striped. I guess you put that over the door gap. So you can just keep running the line.
A lot of old timers don't like that look. A lot of newer dealers seem to like the look.
Well, I think the hand striping like that's better than cal stripe. They even still make that.
Yeah, I think they do, but I'm not positive. And this is going to be a little thicker line. And just to show a thinner line, we'll just pull even a thinner one maybe down on the other side. So we'll do a triple line, so to speak.
And you can, again, you're controlling how thick these lines are by how much pressure you put on the brush.
And it's the exact brush
All right,
to do all three.
Oh, don't pull it off yet. I want to zoom right in there and so you guys can see. See, you just pulled it right up and over. Okay, I guess pull it off slow. And there's your straight line. And I guess if you had the Scotch tape, the clear tape, you wouldn't have those little like bumps on the outside edges.
Nope, exactly. And then we could just take this one and bring it into here. Again, none of this is pre-planned, so we're just, as Fritz would say, winging it. Well, now I'm going to show you how to get rid of these little points. Okay, with urethane, it sets up enough that sometimes you can just push the paint back.
All right, let me get in there.
And sometimes you need a rag.
There we go.
If it's not set up enough. And I'm going to use that same wax and grease remover on the rag.
What do you mean, push the paint back?
Well, the paint is actually stuck out, and you can take that little point, I hope you can see it,
Yep, go ahead.
and I'm going to literally push it back
You're pushing it into the paint?
towards the paint where
Okay.
it came out of, and it'll get rid of that little extra paint sticking out.
You see, now I just learned something new. And what are you using to push it?
It's actually just a pointed stick.
Okay, so this is,
An old brush that I...
yep, let me back the camera away so it'll focus. That's an old, like a handle from a quill or something.
Old lettering brush.
There you go, and you just kind of sharpen the tip on that. Let me just
Yep.
put my hand behind there because it's not focusing. There we go. So you kind of did that with an X-Acto knife or a razor blade?
Exactly.
There you go. Okay.
And you can just literally push the paint back. If you're using one shot, you might have to wait a little longer for the paint to set up to do that. But if you're doing a big job, you can always come back a little later and do it afterwards. And this way you just clean up the job. So that it's a little neater.
Let me zoom in on that.
Let's talk about a repair.
What are we going to fix, Gary?
Well, I'm going to take out a little section of something and just try to repair it.
All right. So this is if like somebody got like a shopping cart nick or something in their stripe and they ask you to touch it back up?
Or if I smear it when I'm in the middle, oh, that doesn't even want to smear.
I guess that's set up already.
Well, let's take out a little section of that line.
So if you're working on it and, I don't know, your tie or your shirt cuff kind of lays into the paint and mars it up?
Or if you just wet it. Let's try something like, let's say you hit it with the brush and you make a mistake.
Oh, okay, that's a good one.
Okay, so what do we do to clean it? I'm going to use wax and grease remover because it's pretty fast at drying and setting up. Let's clean out that whole area without removing everything else around it. That I don't want to do.
Right, do the other side because you're blocking me with your hand.
I'm going to clean it up and I'm going to bring it in a little bit.
All right, let me zoom in on that where you pulled it in.
I'll get on this side done first. Okay.
All right, I got it focused. Now you can see there where it's kind of like cut into the original line. So I guess when you pull over it, you're going to just restripe or puddle over that.
I'm going to go back like I did originally, come up here where it's thick, and come down to the line and start pressing slowly, and just come right down into that area and just go right over it. And that's one of the repairs.
Oh, see, and there you go, guys. That looks good.
Now, the best way to practice at the beginning, I always felt the best way to do it is to do it in a book A lot of people say practice on glass because it slides and you want to learn how to work on something slippery. I think the best way to start is actually working with a telephone book or an old catalog. So we're going to slide this to the side.
Well, some people have said you can practice on like a piece of glass. Like you can, today you can print something offline like, what is it, Von Dutch's rabbit, and put that print underneath the glass and practice by copying it on the glass.
Von Dutch was an originator from back in the day. But as time goes on, people like to perfect on whoever was there first. So over the years, a lot of stripers have gotten better and better and better. Today's pinstripers are outrageous. There are some people out there that are so creative. They do artwork that belongs in galleries. And
So now pinstriping has become creating a piece of art on a flat, like aluminum panel, and not just covering a rock chip or an imperfection on someone's 49 Merc.
it's an art form that a lot of people do on panels of all different kind of substrates or materials, and they're just hung up in a house. Then there's people that just do more work on automobiles. If it's on an automobile, usually you put less pinstriping on it because you don't want to overdo the car. You want to show the car off. You don't want to overdo. Whereas a panel, you can go on forever and get creative as much as you want.
Now I grabbed this because I wanted to show you. This is something Gary did for the Syracuse Nationals.
Syracuse Nationals.
Syracuse Nationals, and he didn't make it. But this is a lot of stuff he's done. Gary, you went to the School of Visual Arts, right?
In Manhattan, yes.
In New York City. So Gary is not just like a pinstriper, he's an actual artist. But this is Elvira, and you airbrush that, and is there, what kind of different media did you do to get Elvira?
This is airbrushed with urethane paints. It hasn't been clear coated yet. I have to clear coat it, and I'll be bringing it up to Syracuse.
Let me get the glare off of it, I'll tilt it down. There we go.
I'll clear coat it, and this way I can bring it up to the Syracuse Nationals. This will be auctioned off this coming year.
It's July, right?
In July, right.
Okay, and I'll show you the pinstripe. This is what Gary was talking about, right here. If I can get that. But that artwork right there, I mean, that's just, it's not, it's on this piece of plexiglass, right? Plexiglass?
No, it's aluminum.
Aluminium. So it's on this piece of aluminum, and I'll look at you through the little thing there. But you can see, and I'll try and maybe get that even close. You can see how, yeah, it's dusty because, Gary's actually going to be moving from this property to another one, so you can clean it up. But you can see how, uniform from side to side, everything. And look at that lettering. See, this is something that has behooved me. I can't letter like that, and plus my spelling is atrocious. So, that's great. And, like lettering, I guess that's going to have to be a different DVD because it's too much.
This is a Statler or a Stabilo pencil, which is a water-based pencil.
What's the difference between like a grease pencil to the Stilibo? Stilibo?
Yeah, Stilibo.
Stilibo. Let me show everybody.
Okay, this is a water-based pencil.
This here is a water-based pencil.
Water will take it off.
And like I always say, like when I do grafting, I use the pencil, I make my lines. I let the paint dry, and then I spray Windex, because I always have it around, and I wipe it off. And then the lines go away. So people think you're really good at doing what you do. Good trick. And the grease pencil.
This is a grease pencil, a China marker they call them.
And this has got the little string there. If you pull the little string, it rips the paper, and then the paper comes off like in a little, I don't know, I'm doing this like a whoop-de-doo, like
coil.
Like Shirley Temple's hair, for all you that aren't generationally challenged. I don't know who Shirley Temple is. So it comes off in that little coil, and you throw it away, and you can use your X-Acto knife or what have you to give it a point on them. And that's pretty much what Gary's done here. And I'm going to do it in front of me so it focuses. You can see the points on there. But yeah, the grease pencil and the Stilibo pencil. So this is the one that the Stilibo, Stilibo. I know I'm not saying it right. Stilibo. When you go in and you say it wrong at the art supply store, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. And this is the grease pencil, the China marker. Now, what's the thing about the China marker? Why have one or the other? Or
This will only come off with a wax and grease remover. So if you try to wipe it off, when the paint is dry, you could take the paint off too.
So having the Stilibo pencil is the best bet for the buck.
Right.
right, so if you're just starting out, I would go with the Stilbo pencil. Stilbo, whatever it's called. This is a Statler. So the Statler is easier for me because I'm German and this is made in Germany. The Statler pencil.
Here you go, Stabilo.
Stabilo. Here's the Stabilo, and I'm going to tell you that's Stabilo. Stabilo. And this is a Stadler. Stadler. This is a Staedtler. Either way.
They're both water-based.
They come off with Windex, water, spit, you know, and the other one comes off with chemical. So maybe the water-based is the way to go for someone who's starting out. Or I do notice I use these a lot more when I make my monsters and stuff. And at the end of this, you know, I'm going to show you me because everybody asked. So and one fella had asked about how to draw monsters, and that's really, I guess, my strong point. Because look at my face. It's very monstery. Okay. So here we go. Back to making a graft.
I'm just using the tape as my line. What I'm doing, I'm trying to make them a little darker, just enough to see.
So when for this, I understand you're doing it this way for the camera, but you do it just very lightly, just
Very
enough for you to see when you're working on someone's car or something?
That's it, exactly. Now I'm going the other way. Again, I'm just eyeballing this, not putting any measurements down.
That's what I like to call guesstimating.
Guesstimating, okay. And I take this one here, and I bring it down to the line that I just drew. This one's a little too light. I'll just draw it here. And we'll go down one or two more, just to give you an idea.
And again, for some of the guys had asked, how do you do a layout? And he's just gonna, this is just gonna come off the top of his head.
I think for a new striper, a beginner, to focus in on a seasoned professional or a job that you might like, because the layout was actually done well, and if you can copy that at the beginning, eventually on your own, you're going to break away from that style.
Everyone's going to copy somebody else's style, and all those styles cumulatively they create their own from that, right?
Exactly.
Because even like, I don't know, Leonardo and Picasso and Seurat, everybody had to pick up an idea from somewhere, and there was always an artist before that artist, and so on and so forth, right?
And everybody always improved on everybody else.
And that's just the name of the game. It's always a better mousetrap.
It's always a learning curve. So we're going to start with, because I'm a righty, I always start with the left side, because the right side is easier for me to copy than the left.
And you don't drag your hand across your work.
Well, we try not to.
Well, I know I do. That's why I do that and move away from it.
When I'm doing this, I see that the one line here, which is 3/4 of an inch away, is actually far for me. So I'm probably not going to go that far. Now I'm picking any particular point to start, and I'm just going to put this down and make a curve. And because we have a graph, I'm ending just on this bottom line here, and I just missed this line. So I'm on the inside of this line as a graph. So I'm going to try to do that same type of thing. Now this other line is here that I'm going to try to hit, and because this line over is here, I come in at about this point over here.
So you can, if you're just starting out and you want to make sure your widths and everything are correct, after you do this repetitively, guys, it's going to come naturally to you. And you can just make like little tick marks so you know about when you start up here, you may want to come halfway in the box here and outside of the box here, however the artwork went. Those little tick marks will give you a visual destination for the paint to come and cross over as you go down.
Well, for example, the line from this point to the tape, I hit the line right in the center. So I know on this side, I have to hit it right about here. That's the center between these two. Up here, I'm almost, not quite, on the line, which would be about here. Okay, so here it's kind of straighter, and then I curved it in more to hit the bottom line, and I should end this one, it's maybe 1/8 of an inch from the tape, so it should end somewhere in that vicinity. So usually I don't draw the lines there, but for the camera I will. And now you try to hit it. So it's a little straighter coming down at the beginning. and now I start curve, follow it in, and this is a little off, so I'm probably going to end up wiping it because I don't like the way it looks. I was trying to follow my line too well. So now you're going to see how we correct it.
Well, and too, it's like, guys, I need a graph too, but Gary has done this so often that
I don't normally use graphs.
he doesn't. The graph's going to throw him off right now, and I know how he feels.
That's okay.
I used to actually draw my design out very lightly with the pencil, and then as I got better, I discovered that drawing my design out first messed me up. You know, it's like if you clap at a concert, it's going to throw off the band playing music sometimes, because you're out of time, trust me. So, like I say, you got to start somewhere. You start, and then, like I said, I used to do a couple lines by hand with the pencil, and then I'd just paint right over it. I'd stripe, and as I got better, that started to mess me up because I got better. So that's a good sign that you grew out of that and are moving forward with the art.
This line, the second line, is actually hitting the straight line coming down.
And if you guys are concerned about how your design is going to lay out and your thicknesses and consistency of the stripes aren't good, then don't worry about it. Just let them sit and keep going till you get like a nice design. And as time goes by and with doing things repetitively, the thicknesses and consistency of your lines will get better and your designs will get better. Like if you always start off with two lines like this, Gary may make a couple of somethings here, or he may go this way and across, and that's a good starting point. You can always do that as a go-to or a default and move forward from there.
I'm going to show you how you use the graph in this case. I'm using a line that comes across here at this point. I'm going to start here, but I'm going to finish a line either at one of these points back here so I know the other side should hit the same point. And this is just general good practice at the beginning. Again, I don't normally use a graph. I eyeball everything, but it's okay to practice with this way. So I'm starting here right on the line. I'm going to pull the line down with a curve, and then I'm curving it in, and I went below a curve, but I ended up with this outside line. Now I'm just below the last one by 1/4 of an inch down. Over here, I'm about 1/4 inch from the line. So here's the line here. I should end up right about here. So I'm going to start at the same point. Here's my crossover between these two lines. Okay? So there's a line here and there's a line here. My crossover should come in somewhere in that vicinity. And we try to end up down over here.
Now, guys, as Gary's doing it, he's explaining how he does things, and like I say, everybody else may do a graph and use it different ways, and that's what I wanted to show you, is how different everybody is, but yet their work comes out beautiful and stuff at the end. So Gary's not using this graph as like, I have to stay here, I have to stay here. He makes his first line, and however that comes out, it comes out the way he likes it, and then he uses the graph to make sure his other line is going to come out, and that's kind of how I use a graph. And probably what we'll do is when he gets to a point, like one of the guys had asked, how do you know when you're done? I guess when you look at it, I always look at something and I say sometimes one more line will be too much, so then that's where I would leave it. Or if it looks like it needs just a little bit more, maybe that leaves people looking at it wanting more. I don't know, I wouldn't even know how to describe that to you. But you'll know when you're done. Sometimes I see stuff and it's like so much striping, it looks forced, and it's everywhere. I would think that looks too much. But it all depends. Maybe some people like that. So, you do as much or as little as basically someone's paying you for. Or if it's your piece of art, then you just do what you want. And, the heck with the rest of the world.
I'm starting, this one started on this line, so this is the line here. And I'm going to bring it down from this line. And I'm going to extend this line just past it, about 1/4 of an inch, because I did it on the other side. So both of these are even here.
And I'll tell you something, as Gary's doing this, guys, something Gary told me many, many moons ago, in the 1900s, was that always get paid to practice. So what that means to me, and like I said, it'll mean something different to everybody, is you shouldn't like practice on someone's car and get paid for it. If you're at home and you have like, this is a piece of, I don't know, it's a piece of aluminum that's painted black and you're doing some white and red stripes on it. When you're done, you can put it on eBay or Facebook or take it to a swap meet. And if you get, 20 bucks for it or $100 for it, then you got paid to practice. And just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. And as time goes by, through repetition, like I say, practice makes perfect, so to speak. And you got paid to practice. Hey, if you can put an extra couple bucks in your pocket, then that's a good thing. And you can see that, these curves, that's that whole thumb and forefinger rolling jammy that Gary's doing. And that's how you get those curves like that. And basically, pinstriping is just a series of straight lines and curves.
And this point here, I'm from the last line, I'm over a quarter of an inch. So here's my last line, here's my quarter of an inch. Now I brought the line down a lot further than the graft, but that shouldn't make a difference. And I'm attaching this line, and I'm going to come across, because it just went above the crosshair line, so we're going to bring this side the same way, and just go across that by just a little bit, coming down here and ending it somewhere around there.
So now, Gary, if somebody's doing this at home and they're an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch off here and there, I mean, should they be upset about that, or is that like acceptable, or how would you describe it?
Well, remember, we're doing everything by hand, so there's no machinery here, there's no computer, so if you're off a little bit, especially at the beginning, it's not a big deal.
So is that like Confucius saying imperfections make things perfect?
If you say so.
Well, I can go with that.
Or here's what we talked about earlier, pushing the line back. Here's my line, I have an extra little hair sticking out, I can push that paint back into place so it looks a little neater. And then I'm just picking up a line right on this line right here, so I know it's going to be the same height as the other side, and I'm bringing this line down into this one. And that line on this side is right here, and this is where a graft helps somebody that's new at it. Because both sides will be the same. Because there are a lot of people that don't use grafts, and their pinstriping ends twisted up a little bit, one side's higher than the other, and they don't see it until the job is done. Now here's where we do a little body execution. I'm moving way over to this side because I like to pull, and I'm going to drop this line down and come up only to the line that's going across. And again, this might be hard to see for the camera because it's going to give you my back, but I'm going to pull this one here down just below the line and then come up into the line. And this one should be a hair shade longer, so we can extend it a little bit longer. And let's bring this one halfway to here.
So now, at this point, how would you know if do you feel like you're finished or almost finished, or I want to get this to a certain point, let it dry and add another color? I mean, how do you, mentally or subconsciously determine that?
If you're using one color for the whole design, you can continue going. If I was to put another color on here, I'd say that might be enough, because the second color is going to start adding more, and a third color is going to add more. Otherwise, you can end up putting too much on. If it's a panel for artwork, you can go crazy and add as much as you want. But if you're doing on a car, doing pinstriping on a car, I would say put a little bit less on. Less is more.
Now, what if you're doing something and the two colors you're using are a light color and a dark color? Is there a preference of a color to start with, or whatever's loaded on your brush from the last job? And the same question for, like, let's say you're using red, yellow, blue, or like, just like, if you're going with 3 colors, how would you use the light color, the medium color, and the dark color? Like, how would you figure that and start and finish with that?
It all depends on the background color. I like to use a more subtle color in the background.
So you mean like the color of the car you're striping, or a motorcycle, or what have you?
For example, if I'm working on a black car, I'll use a darker color. Let's say a maroon, a red, or something like that. And I also want to go work my way up to a white, classic of the 50s style. Okay? So then I will add a gray, and then next color will be a gray, and then finally my last color will be a white. So the white would be on top. Whereas if I did it in reverse, the white would be down, the red would be cutting through the white lines all the time. So the color that's darker should be in the background, the lighter color should be up front. It's not a rule, it's just a suggestion.
But that's just how you do things, and you're comfortable with how the product comes out.
Well, I know what I want it to look like as a finished product. A beginning designer or a beginning pinstriper may not understand that. They may start with a color they like and then realize all the lines are being cut up by other lines.
So basically, it's okay to start this way, that way, or the other way, and then it's good to make the mistakes so you have that learning experience. So mistakes aren't bad.
I think the thing to do is to really study good artists, good pinstripers. There's a lot of good pinstripers out there, and they're turning out nice work. A lot of guys are on Facebook.
Well, there's also groups on Facebook like Pinstripers Garage, or things like that. I'm sure if you just use the search on Facebook for pinstripe, a lot of things will pop up.
People's work to look at. I should throw a few names out there. You got Hot Rod Jen. She's a lefty. She turns out beautiful panels and artwork.
Where is Jen located?
She's located in Pennsylvania.
I'm sure if you Googled Hot Rod Jen, she'd pop up.
Right.
There you go. Or even Facebook, guys.
You got Von Dago, who makes the brushes. He's out in Utah. He does some beautiful work, nice fine work. You got Todd Hansen, turns out work, and his work is elaborate.
Where's Tom from?
I'm not really sure where Tom's from.
Is he an international man of mystery?
I'd say Tom may be from the Midwest, don't hold me to it. But he has got some nice brushes also. His brushes are called the King 13. And they're really nice striping brushes as well. His work is over the top with a lot of color and a lot of design work in him. And then if you want to go to a more flowery look, a more flowing look, you got the Wizard out in Ohio. And he turns out some real nice stuff too. So those are guys you might want to look up and see the kind of work that they actually do. And those are the guys to emulate. That's the kind of work you want to copy. And eventually you can go out on your own, because your style will eventually, on its own, morph into your style.
I guess, because I know I kind of realized I copied a lot of stuff you did, and a guy that used to be called the Englishman in Long Island, Vic Kessler, he's a guy out of Queens. And if anybody has the Ed Roth DVD, Vic Kessler was on that doing a Camaro with Alex Delina, who I hope you'll see in this DVD also. And they're gone now, so if you have that DVD, you'll have that little piece of history.
And at the end, we're just going to take the tape off and put a line down the center, and we'll be done. And this tip of the brush is starting.
If you didn't have the tape, you could, like, let's, for argument's sake, made this line go straight across that curve and done it that way.
Well, we can still do it.
I'm just asking, because sometimes that's what I do.
We still do it. We take a line from here, and bring it across. I like to start at the other side and bring it into that line.
That's the only way I can do it.
Some people go all the way across and up, and that's fine. Whatever works for you. I'm going to go from the same point, which is about halfway up.
And be careful where you put your fingers, kids. You'll be smushing all your work. And
come in and hit the other line. we go across. Now what do we do with those lines? Well, I can take this one from here and bring it down and curve it in like so. And that looks even better. Let's just take this one here and just going to attach it here, make it real simple, and just bring this one down into this one to end it. Lift
So,
up.
do you ever, when you're striping, say, I'm going to put a happy little line here like Bob Ross from TV?
No, I never think about lines as being happy or not happy.
Okay.
Okay, we made the line crisscross like you suggested. And we'll just bring a line down as a center line. It kind of finishes it off. And you don't have to go even all the way if you don't want it. It's as far as you want to go. So we'll bring this up here. And bring this down. Follow through. And this one I did bring all the way down. And you got to be careful not to put your hands in the wet paint.
So, if somebody's practicing at home, would it be, and they think they've gotten so far and they really like the way it's come out and the line's real nice to them, but they want to do that center line and not drag their fingers, it would be cool if they just let that paint dry and came back with the next day to finish off a few things.
You can, but not if you're doing a customer's car.
Yeah, but we're practicing.
We don't want to wait. Now this one here, I'm noticing it's off a little bit. So what do? We can bring this up a little higher. And this one, lean it off to the side. And I'm going to have to, oh, we're getting a little sloppy here at the end. I'm going to have to clean this up. So you want to know how about mistakes and cleaning them up? That's what we're going to do now.
So you've got your, like a cotton t-shirt around that old paint stick and just a little bit of chemical to, did you say that was wax and grease?
Wax and grease remover, yep.
For that works for the urethane auto paint.
Yep, it does. It works great. And it'll be a little closer, still off a little bit, but that's what makes pinstriping an art form, not a computerized thing. Now see if we can make it a little thicker to balance it off just a little bit better. Okay. I'm bringing this one in just a hair shade closer to the center, and then I'll clean up the thickness, or I can even thicken up the other one on the other side just a touch so that they look closer to being identical. And that's how we repair a mistake without a lawyer.
So at this point, like I always go back to the question that one of the fellows had asked of, how do you know when you're done? Are you like comfortable and you think this is good and this is where you want to leave it off and you're a done deal?
I think it all depends on whether you're doing a pinstriping panel or a car. On a car, I think less is better. You can always add to it. You can always tell the customer, do you want more? If you put too much on and the customer doesn't like it, and then he's either stuck with it or you got to start taking things off, and that's a problem. So I'd rather put less on a car and then add more later on. You can always add another color. This here is a simple design. It's
I'm going to get right in on that with the camera, Gary, so I can give a close-up to everybody of the finished product without getting too much glare. Trying to get away from the glare, guys. There we go. I try and zoom in on it quick, really heavy, so you can see. That's pretty cool. And I want to show you guys quick, like these lines. I'll show you this line here that, you know, it does just, you can put your finger on that and it comes right off. So after this is all dry, you could just, you know, go around with your fingers and take all that right on off. We'll back it up and that's that. So that here, let me pull this camera back and away just a bit more. Whoop, that's not good. Let me bring that up.
I was going to get you some water.
Okay.
Just wiping it off.
So, you know, we have this here. I'll show you. Pick it up this way on the piece of tile. Now, the Romans used to do their pinstriping, by the way. And that's that piece right there. Let me try and get it turned the right way. There you go. And I'll just kind of get right in on that so we can go straight up and show you how nice Gary's lines are. I wish mine were this good. I don't practice enough. And I think Gary said, because this is urethane, if this was one shot, you'd have to wait till tomorrow or a couple hours. I think Gary said this is good to go to wipe those off. So I'll show you, again, I'll try and get in close because I want you to see those graft lines. I know you can see them there. And, you know, I still use them. I still need them. I'm not such a great pinstriper that I think I can do it. Sometimes I do it without it, and I'm not happy with myself, so I always try and use it. But I'll zoom in so you can watch them come off with just water. It's really nice.
A little Poland spring.
Fina will work, and I guess Perrier would work also for all of you bottled water people out there. And I'm going to be focused in pretty good at that top left corner, Gary.
Up here?
Yep.
I'm laughing because it's not coming all off. Maybe most of it. There you go.
And that's how you hide the fact that you use a graft, guys, is just do that. And the pencil that's underneath where you pull the stripes, that's not going anywhere, so don't worry about it.
This is being urethane. I can get some of it off if I don't smear it, because the water will not affect the urethane, and I might be able to get it all off, except where it's wet.